Friends, on behalf of Ananta IAS Academy, I will be discussing with you today about the Prelims Hungama. What is this Hungama? This Hungama starts on 10th October when you are going to write the prelims examination. Ananta Academy started about a year back from Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Vishakhapatnam, is catering to the needs of the candidates appearing for the prelims examinations only. We deal with the students of below 10th class, intermediate, and degree level also, and PG students who are appearing these exams also. We have about 4 to 5 candidates who are appearing for the prelims exams of 2020 October, 21 October, and those who are being groomed to appear for these examinations in the forthcoming examinations when they complete their 10th class, intermediate, and that. The reason behind it is to train them, to grow them, and to make them feel comfortable when they reach 21 years of age so that they can crack it in the first instance itself. You may ask the question, sir, is it possible to crack on the first attempt itself? Yes, why not? There are people who have done several attempts, did not clear. There are people who repeated for second and third times and who got the ranks. And there are people like Mr. Karthik, who is now undergoing training at Kadapa as a assistant collector trainee at the first instance itself, because it depends upon your caliber, your attempt to reach the goal, and your determination to reach the goal. That is more important. Let me discuss here today with you about the prelims examination. Most of the people, they feel it as a ghastly incident, which they feel it as very nervous, tremendous, and it is not easy to crack the prelims in the first attempt itself, because there are 2 3 parameters for that. Number one, the number of people who are appearing for these examinations will be around 3 to 4 lakhs, and the remained qualifications are the maintenance of the mains examination, and the cutoff mark will be only for 25,000 people. So out of these 4 lakhs, only 25,000 people are becoming eligible, and you are going to back again to write the prelims examination. What is the difficulty in prelims examination? The prelims examination has a definite syllabus, but the questions are not very congenial to that syllabus. You can't expect what are the questions you can expect during this year, because it varies from time to time and year to year. I have a few booklets with me, and I have gathered the information from 2011 to today for the last 10 years period. So in this 10 years period, the prelims question paper, general studies paper 1, vary with the different angles of questioning pattern. Normally, it is learned that the question papers are set by 5 to 6 people, and each of them prepare 100 questions. But the UPSC in general, they club and consolidate a question paper, and even that question paper also is published in 4 numbers. Suppose if the question number 1 to 100 is in A, the second B, it will carry from 71 or 72 or whatever it is, like that. The C, it will carry from 21 or like that. It is like jumbling. Why this jumbling? Because some of the people who are writing along with you should not copy ABCDs. That is the reason they jumble the questions, and different sets of question papers are prepared, and in the same hall, both A, B, both are distributed to the candidates for the examination. Then comes the time duration. The time duration is only 120 minutes, that is 2 hours. The questions you have to write is 100 questions. To go through the question paper itself, it takes minimum of 20 to 25 minutes. So you should not be in a hurry to answer all the questions at a go. Instead of that, I will tell you the way how to approach the question paper writing ABC, even though it is a marking of ABCD in the pro forma given to you, there is a likelihood of you getting misconfused or confused. What is the reason behind it? The question is not as straightforward. When is the constitution prepared? Who is the architect of the constitution? It is not like our 10th class or 12th class examination question paper. It is a roundabout way the question is given to you, and within this 120 minutes you have to answer this 100 questions. And then the another threat of a very big bhota, that is negative marking is there. 0.33% marks are deducted from the marks which you have already obtained. So if you attempt about 30 questions in wrong way, you will be losing 10 marks which you have already got it. And the cutoff mark for these 200 marks will be around 110 or so for the prelims examination. So even if you write 55 questions in a correct manner, you are sure to go to the threshold of the mains examination. If you write 5 to 6 wrong answers, then this 110 will be minus, and then you will be losing the chance. And there are only 6 chances to appear. And your age limit also is there, 21 to 32. So keeping all these things in mind, the presentation part, the writing answers of that particular moment on 10th October is a very big misnomer, and people think that it is very difficult to answer all these questions. I suggest a few points to you for the consideration. Number one, you first run through all the 100 questions. That is one way. Or you go on writing all the questions which you know very well, cocksure, and go on making in the rough paper. You mark A, B, or C, or whatever it is. Then you come back. You come back to the question paper. You read the question paper for the second time, that particular question, and the controversy or the difficulty in that question, and the way the statements have been made, and you are asked to qualify or notify what is the exact answer is to be done. Then, after finishing all these things within about 1.5 hours or so, if you feel like answering the questions which you are not sure, cocksure, then you don't make a rough estimation of guessing. That we call it as a wild guess. Don't make wild guess, because this is not the place for you to make the wild guess, because it will be losing a mark. 3 wrong answers will be losing 1 mark, and each mark counts, because it is in the question of lakhs of people appearing for the examination. So I will suggest you that you first answer all the questions which you are thoroughly sure and you feel that it is the right answer. Then, coming back to the second attempt, while you go to the question paper once back, if you have left the 24 or 29 or 32 questions, then you go through the questions, take a 1 more minute to assimilate that question and to answer the correct answer in a rightful manner. Then after finishing it, within another last 10 minutes, you go through all the answers and try to mark it in the prescribed pro forma form with the pencil which they have given, and that will be your final judgment. I have about 10 question papers with me, I told you, from right now, from 2011 to 2020. These questions vary with the differences. Why? 1 year, they might have given about 10 to 12 questions on environment. In another year, geography contains 14 questions. The next year, the history takes the run. So you cannot expect the examiner or the question paper according to your methodology or according to your own convenience. It depends upon your luck. That is the only thing which I can say. For example, let us examine the question paper of 2011. This is a B category question paper. This is a B. And the first question carries: the 2004 tsunami made people realize that mangroves can serve as a reliable safety hedge against the coastal calamities. How do mangroves function as a safety hedge? Here you have to guess the reasoning of that particular question. They have gone back to 2004. The question paper was 2011. So you should not think that it will be based on the current affairs. It can be of 10 years back theme, or it can be of sufficiently new reason. Here they have taken 2004 tsunami. That was a very big calamity throughout the area. So here they have given four answers. The mangrove swamps separate the human settlements from the sea by a wide zone in which people neither live nor venture out. Like that, they have given four answers. Within these four answers, you have to mark A, B, C, D, whatever it is. Then the second question, it immediately jumped to Jainism because it belongs to the question of a religious aspect or a culture. The Jain philosophy holds that the world is created and maintained by universal law, universal truth, universal faith, and universal soul. Unless and until you are very thorough with the answer, it may be truth, law, or faith, or soul, you should be able to assimilate the Jainism philosophy. Then only you will be able to correctly point out the ABCDs. Then comes the another question about geographical nature. The salinization occurs when the irrigation water accumulated in the soil evaporates, leaving behind salts and minerals. What are the effects of salinization on the irrigated land? This question is normally for the benefit of geography students. Geography students might have studied about salinization, and the irrigation land and whatever it is. Here, the answers are: it greatly increases the crop production, it makes some soils impermeable, it raises the water table, it fills the air spaces in the soil with water. All these four normally will be alike. Then the problem comes whether I have to make A, B, or C, or D. There is no time for you. 100 questions, 120 minutes. Each minute means it will be running like anything. Just to read the question itself, it takes about 10 to 15 seconds. And then to think for that question, about 30 to 40 seconds. And finally, to mark that, it may be complete 1 minute. So you will be running out of the time, and by the time the 1 hour is over, you will be sweating and you feel mostly discomfortable because you are in a very awkward situation to complete the other answers. Then the another question, because each question doesn't cooperate with other, matlab, it doesn't cater to a single phenomena, because you have 7 segments in prelims question paper syllabus, that is general studies number 1, that comes to geography, history, economy, public administration, current affairs, the freedom movement, and other things, which comes to 7 segments. So according to the segment wise categorization, this question is about the red data books published by the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources contain lists of endemic plant and animal species present in the biodiversity hotspots, threatened plant and animal species, protected sites for conservation of nature and natural resources. This is the way, and then the answer comes: A 1 and 3, B 2 only, C 2 and 3, D 3. If this question is like this, and there are three statements, and among these three statements, one, two, three, or all three will be correct, then you have to take a minute to understand the intricacies of that answer and the statement, and to find out which is the correct judgment. So you please answer them. If you are thoroughly sure, then only you will get the mark. Then the another question comes: why is the offering of teaser loans by commercial banks a cause of economic concern? These teaser loans, if you are thorough with the banking system and if you have read the economy part and the segment, normally the students, they neglect 1 or 2 points. Suppose you are very familiar with the science and technology segment, you go on reading most of the books of science and technology, and you will neglect the economy part. because you are not thorough with that, because your graduation was in engineering or medicine or whatever it is. So depending upon your optional subject which you have taken, if you have taken public administration, you will be very familiar with this type of questions of public administration, constitution, amendments to the constitution. But here, this is teaser loan. It belongs to the banking sector and the economy segment. So here, unless you know what are these teaser loans and who sponsors them and who are the beneficiaries of it, you will not be able to know the correct answer. Then comes the question paper is in bilingual language. One para and one column, it consists of English and the other column is Hindi. Or the first paper is English and second paper is Hindi. The another question here, which has been figured in 2011, an artificial satellite orbiting around the Earth does not fall down. This is so because the attraction of Earth. Here, this is also a question belonging to geography, and it pertains to the artificial satellite and the attraction of the Earth. These two things, unless you are very clear in your mind and there is no confusion, you can't answer this question properly. Then another question comes in the context of Indian economy, consider for the following statements. Number one, the growth rate of GDP has steadily increased in the last 5 years. The growth rate in per capita income has steadily increased in the last 5 years. Here there is a option between GDP and per capita income. So if you have the clear cut idea of this GDP and per capita income, then only you will be able to answer either it is 1, 2 or 1 and 2 or neither 1 or 2. This is the most important point which you have to keep in mind. There is no use just go on reading number of books and number of coaching centers papers which they have given to you. You should assimilate what is the matter and what is the way to answer, then only you will be able to answer this. Another question, it belongs to credit and agriculture. In India, which of the following have the highest share in the disbursement of credit to agriculture and allied activities? Commercial banks, cooperative banks, regional rural banks, microfinance institutions. This is another important segment which you have to readily and steadily follow. The agriculture loans are given to the poorer section of the community and they are benefited for the long period. In 1969, Srimati Indira Gandhi nationalized the banks and it was a landmark thing in the entire history of India. After getting the democracy, our independent India, we had the option of going through this nationalization of banks and she was hailed for that very, very dynamic attempt. So, in this question, the credit to agriculture also, those times it was a marginal interest rate of 4% interest banks have given to the agricultural people. This question is more important in that era. Another question, which of the following can aid in furthering the government's objectives of inclusive growth? This is the word which is oftenly used, inclusive growth. Planning Commission also, it has given up its priority in one of the plans for the inclusive growth. This is the latest word used in the banking sector as well as the governmental information given by the prime minister or different ministers of the country. So you should know what is inclusive growth, what does it mean, and what are the parameters in that. In this question, the answers given are three. Number one is it promotes self-help groups, promotes micro, small, and medium enterprises, implements the Right to Education Act. This is a very misleading statement. All the three you may not be having in mind, but you should not put your step in the wrong direction because it is very misleading. So be careful while answering. Then another question comes about public sector enterprises. This is the debatable point for the last 1 decade regarding whether the public sectors are doing well or they are bad in respect to the exchequer. Here, this question is why is Government of India disinvesting its equity in the central public sector enterprises? Because at the time of Nehru's period, the thrust was on public sector companies. Most of the public sector companies came into power and they have made a mark, and they are now like called Navaratnas. And all these public sector undertakings, they were doing very well. But during the last 3 4 decades, some of the public sectors, they are not doing well, like the nationalized banks. So it was leading to the problem of coming into an almost like anarchy. So here the question is, the government intends to use the revenue earned from the disinvestment mainly to pay back the external debt. Government no longer intends to retain the management control of the public sector undertakings. This is to be thoroughly studied, and then only you have to answer. Otherwise, you keep quiet. You should be able to know what are the public sector undertakings, their constitutional obligations, and their propriety and the way they are functioning, and the reasons for the disinvestment by the government of India. These things you should be aware, and you should be able to acclimatize yourself for that particular situation. Then, this is also a point to be remembered. What is the difference between asteroids and comets? This is a science and technology question, because most of the time the science and technology sphere will get about 10 questions definitely. The current affairs sometimes may vary from 10 to 12 or whatever it is. Most of the times on environment, they're giving a lot of stress. So you prepare well in advance. You have only about 100 days to go. If I have to say, you leave October, you have July, August, September, 3 months. 3 months means 13 weeks. Within these 13 weeks, you have to complement or complete all the 7 segments of your prelims GS paper 1, and you should not neglect about GS paper 2 also, CSAT. CSAT paper also is very important. You should get at least 40% of the marks. Then only your paper 1 will be counted. Unless and otherwise you get 40% marks in that CSAT examination, you will not be eligible to go for the mains. So the science and technology question of these asteroids and comets is to be in a thorough manner answered. The another question is on economy. The economic growth is usually coupled with, this is also a question of debatable point. One is deflation, inflation, stagflation, hyperinflation. Most of the sentences, most of the words, they appear similar, but there's a small difference. So you have to identify the difference before you answer, and all these things are to be done within a minute. You are in a like a running train moving fast, and if you want to jump out of the train, you will lose your head or legs. Here also in the same manner, if you are running for the time, and if you are running with the answers, and if you have becoming a completely confused person, the answering will be very, very, very difficult. Then comes the another banking question. The lowering of bank rate by the Reserve Bank of India leads to, most of the time, you might have heard the words repo rate, bank rates, and Reserve Bank of India's meetings. All these things, you should have a full thorough knowledge. Otherwise, you will not be able to answer these banking questions. Here the question comes, the lowering of banking rate. Most of the people like us who got pensions, they invest their money which they got through provident fund and others in the banks in fixed deposits, because normally we doesn't go for the mutual funds or purchasing of shares, because we are not sure of the income which we are going to get out of it. So when we retired, we used to get about 12% or 11% for the fixed deposit. But now it has come back to 6%. And most of the people, they are very hardly striving for their livelihood, because the amount which they have fixed income is very, very small, and they doesn't have the children to fall back. Even if their children are there, they are not about in a way to help these parents. So here the question comes, the lowering of bank rate. What is the reason for that? The more liquidity in the market, the less liquidity in the market, no change in the liquidity in the market, and mobilization of more deposits by commercial bank. This is the way how the questioning pattern is there and how the statements are made. I will explain 3 or 4 more questions before I conclude with this day's session. Consider the following. This is another way of giving question. Right to education, right to equal access to public service, right to food. Which of the above is or you human rights under Universal Declaration of Human Rights? You should be thorough with all these universal rights and all these right to information, right to education, all these things you should be in a manner to answer them in whichever roundabout manner they are given. Another question becomes, there is a concern over the increase in harmful algal blooms in the sea waters of India. What could be the causative factors for this phenomena? Is also a question of geography. And then comes a question, consider the following: photosynthesis, respiration, decay of organic matter, volcanic action. Which of the above add carbon dioxide to the carbon cycle on the earth? This comes to the environmental, or you may say science and technology. So the science and technology segment also is a very vast subject. Though these seven segments are particular in the syllabus, you doesn't know the end or beginning or the middle. Like Lord Krishna says about his Vishwarupa, here also your syllabus is like in a Vishwarupa. You have to earn marks only by controlling yourself and by respecting the law of the day. Then comes another question on USA. Recently, the USA decided to support India's membership in multilateral export control regimes called the Australia Group and Wassenaar Arrangement. What is the difference between them? This is an international point, and all the international things are you have to make in a separate notebook, and you keep watch of all these international agreements, UN declarations, and America's declarations, and all these points they have to be in your mind, not in the book, because in the answer sheet they doesn't give you what is this and what is that. So be thorough with the international arrangements and agreements. Then finally, the question of the surface of a lake. The surface of a lake is frozen in severe winter, but the water at its bottom is still liquid. What is the reason? This is a question of science and technology, and the sea waters, the lake waters, why they are frozen at the bottom of it, and in the lower part they are in the bottom is liquid. All these types of questions you think over and answer, and you run through the question first and then come back to the questions and answer them in a particular manner. So friends, within these 3 weeks or 4 weeks of a month, you concentrate on a particular segment in the month of July, and then in the August, September, you have your own thorough way of preparation and go through the old question papers. That is more important. And you write as many as number of question papers, then it will be easier for you to run through in the examination. The old question papers, and then the mock tests, and your own preparation and thorough knowledge of the current affairs, it will definitely give you the clearance for the mains. And I wish you all the best.